So my mom made a profession of faith when she was a kid at a backyard vacation Bible school. They gave her a little Gideon's Bible, a handheld Gideon's Bible back then when she was a child, and I think she was in Walla Walla maybe at the time. And she still has that Bible. She showed it to me once I became a Christian. She showed it to me where she had made a profession of faith, and she's held on to that all of those years. And my mom is a blessing to me these days, but she's never been baptized. And we've talked about that over the years a few times, a number of times. One time, Mom and Dad were in Montana, racing horses in Montana. I was pastoring that at that point. I was pastoring in Spokane for a little while, an interim pastor of a church in Spokane. And Mom just called me up with the phone, and she says, I want you to come to Montana, and I want you to baptize me in Flathead Lake. Told her baptism doesn't work that way, that I don't have the authority to baptize, that the authority for baptism comes from the local church, and so that I needed to be, it needed to be in and out of a church that I'd be baptized. I can baptize in a lake, that's not a problem, but it would need to be a church function, not me just going in and dunking her. That'd be no different than Pat Boone baptizing people in his swimming pool. It's useless. It just doesn't matter. And so now Mom she's living for the Lord, and Dad has passed away, and Mom desires to live for the Lord. She's real close to homebound, very close to homebound. But baptism is interesting to her. She is interested in it. And I've spoken to her about and introduced her to the pastor in that area. His name is Parish Plumley Victory Baptist Church. So Brother Plumley gave her a book. It's written by Robert Sargent, who lives over in Oak Harbor, Washington, near where my oldest son lives. And the book is called What? I Must Be Rebaptized. And what he is trying to do in that book is to explain why it is that the Baptists have this position that even if a person was baptized, as a child in a Catholic church, or he's baptized maybe in a Presbyterian church, or, whatever other kind of church, why it is that we as Baptists would teach that unless a person was baptized in a Baptist church, then we would require them to be rebaptized for membership. And why we would hold that position. In fact, it's why we're called Baptists, and originally are Anabaptists, which means rebaptizer, because very, very early on in Christian history, by the end of the third century, I should say by the beginning of the third century, there were already churches who were saying, who were refusing the baptisms of the organized churches, those churches that were becoming compromising with the world and were losing their doctrinal credibility. And at some point, the Anabaptist people just said, listen, this church is so far off base, we can no longer accept that it is a church with the authority of the Lord Jesus Christ upon it to baptize. And so it has been the position historically of Baptists that we require those who come into our membership to be saved, and after salvation, after profession, testimony, salvation, then to be scripturally baptized. And then that baptism becomes the door into the local church. There are some independent Baptists that don't accept that door part. They would say a person gets saved, then they are baptized, and then the door into the church's membership is by church vote. That's not my position. I believe that baptism, that when a person is baptized under the authority of a local church, then that baptism is the doorway. It automatically makes them members of the church by virtue of the baptism. It's kind of like when a baby is born. You don't look it over and decide whether you're going to keep it. Once it's stillborn, it has to be buried. It would be buried, but if it is born alive, then it is accepted into the family. And that's what I believe happens when the person is saved, scripturally saved. Then they're going to understand. When they're genuinely saved, they're going to understand the necessity of baptism. They're not going to mind doing it. They're going to do what the Bible teaches. And when they're baptized, we accept them into membership without hesitation or question. They are our babies for whatever faults that they have. So I think I'm going to take a little bit of time and over the next few days and just do a few videos on the subject of baptism and why baptism and what it is and what it isn't.